Hey, Star Wars fans and Rule of the Galaxy fans. It's Joe in the pilot seat. We are starting chapter 152 of the Rule of the Galaxy podcast. Thank you so much for being with us and staying on this ride with us. We got a bunch of our regular co-hosts with us, which we're really excited about. And we have a special guest, so we'll get to him in a minute, and we're going to have a lot of fun. This is a show we're all excited about. But as always, Brent loves when I hit the bullet points. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Rule the Galaxy SW. Follow us on Facebook and YouTube at Just Rule the Galaxy. Follow us on TikTok at Rule the Galaxy Podcast. You can email us at ruletheGalaxySW@gmail.com. And for those of you who want beautiful gear, hats, shirts, everything else with our logo, and if you're watching on YouTube right now, you'll see that you just go to Etsy.com, type in Rule the Galaxy, all one word, all in caps. It'll take you to our shop. Laura Burton there will take care of you. But that's our sales pitch. We're going to have some fun with chapter 152 of Rule of the Galaxy. To go along with all those announcements, I want to get these out of the way because I have a feeling once we get rolling, we won't stop. So for those of you who know the Father-Son Galaxy podcast with Keith and Kerwin, we're going to have them on a special show with that father and son combo and me and my son, Joey. Joey Molinaro we're going to be doing that this Sunday, so it'll be out sometime next week. So check that out if you're interested in that. Also next week, the Duchess, Jessica, will be hosting the show, and we will have Jonathan Davis, Star Wars audiobook narrator, who, with our special guest tonight, has a lot in common with some things there related to, I believe, Darth Bane. And Jonathan was also the voice of the Brotherhood book that just came out recently. So always a great guest. We've had him on before. A couple other touch points. The Indiana Toy and Comic Expo will be going on August 28th in Bloomington, Indiana, at the Morgan County Convention Center. I think Joey and I are going to go check that out. Might see if some of the other Rule of the Galaxy crew want to go check that out. So if you're around Indiana, if you're around Bloomington, IU, things like that, check out the Indiana Toy and Comic Expo. It's all over the social media lines. Second to last but not least, the ICC Con has put out their dates. We discussed this with Matt Orman last week, and they will be May 26th through the 28th of 2023 in Nashville, Tennessee. Hoping that I know we're already invited back, but hope to see some more of our listeners there next year. Now, this is the last one. Author Cavan Scott, I'm guessing I'm pronouncing that right, Cavan Scott, with the High Republic books and so many other Star Wars books. He has, we've gotten some time. We've got some clearance with him. And I know this is a long time away, but in November, after he finishes up with the book he's working on, we will have Cavan Scott on, and that we're looking forward to that. So all that being said and done, chapter 152, let's go around all the guys who are fun to listen to. We'll start with Mr. Nick Shesky. How you doing, Nick?
Man, I'm doing great, Joe. I'm pumped to be back on, pumped to be on a show with you again. I know we've been doing, hosting different weeks, but man, getting a chance to jump on with you and with Alfie. I feel like I haven't been on a show with you in literal years. And so, man, I'm glad to be back on with you as well, too. And man, just pumped to talk some Star Wars tonight. And I'm going to shut up because I'm more excited about our guests than most of the guests we've had. So I'll shut up and be quiet. But man, I'm doing well, Joe. Good to see you, man.
Good. I'm glad you're enjoying the outdoor Indiana weather here this evening. So DDoc from Philly, my man DDoc, who made this beautiful sign behind me. How you doing, brother?
Doing good. It sounds like my dog is barking upstairs, so hopefully you can't hear that. But yeah, I just had my brother's wedding over the weekend. It's been crazy. I got over a little bit of sickness, but in this wedding, there was Star Wars brought up during the vows. The guy who was reading it, my brother knows the guy too, but he was talking about the bond between a man and a woman, and then he kind of just said, almost like a Jedi with the Force. And I'm just like, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, so
I thought that was going to get really dark and it was going to be like some kind of master apprentice Sith Lord thing. Glad it didn't go there.
Yes. Do you take her? Yeah.
That's awesome. Any Star Wars touch points in our regular everyday lives is great. That is great.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you're feeling better. I know last week you were under the weather and then the wedding and all that stuff. So glad you're feeling
I'm
better. Hey, my good friend Alfie. Alfie, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be back, man. I know it's been a little while since I've been on here. It's just like DDoc, we've been busy, little vacation. We've all been sick, and highest to highs, lowest to lows.
Well, you were a dance dad over the last weekend, right?
Yeah, actually I was for like 5 days. It was pretty awesome. We had a great time.
Man, I tell you, I've never been to the dance events like that, but I've been to plenty of baseball, softball, big events, and then some show choir events. But the dance thing seems to take it to another level.
Yeah, it was a good time. I was glad I finally got to go.
Good. I know you work like crazy, so I'm glad you got a chance to do it as well. So,
well, one real quick thing though, before we get into it though, I know I talked to you a little bit about a Star Wars collection that I'd gotten word of.
Mm-hmm.
I had to let it go. I finally got some pictures, and it was the original 12.
Oh,
yeah. All the weapons, final capes, no rips. I mean, all in mint condition, and it was too much money. But I've been kind of down about that, as we get. But I stopped by Target on the way home, and just to lift my spirits up a little bit, I managed to snag the only Obi-Wan that they did have.
No, Alfie, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you for knowing where your limit is. As the non-action figure guy in this group, I'm proud of your self-control and being able to go, you know what, that's too far for us to push it. It didn't take a debit card being declined. It didn't take anything. You were able to just self-control it. Way to go, my brother.
I'm gonna admit I didn't sleep really well that night. I couldn't stop thinking about it and going over it in my mind. But yeah.
Oh gosh. Well, I'm glad you held back as well. And if I wasn't going to Italy this fall, I probably would have gone to my wife and said, "Hey, can I take this off of Alfie's hands? This, but yeah, I've got to stock that money away because I don't want to get stuck there without any money to come home."
The only way they could have been in better condition was to have been carded. No yellow, like I said, no rips in the vinyls. The lightsabers were still in the hands.
Well, I'm glad you held off, and you know what? We'll find more stuff like that on our further adventures.
Yeah.
So,
and I was really surprised to find all that at Target. They had a full Kenobi selection there.
Wow, man!
For a few seconds, I picked up Vader and Kenobi, and when I went to put the Vader back, it was all gone.
Oh my gosh! Well, that is Star Wars in a Target and Walmart right now. So, it is what it is. And DDoc is talking about his dog barking, and now my dog's outside my door saying, "Dad, you're in there. I want to be in there with you. Sorry, we're gonna have to let him sit out there." But enough of us. For you regular Rule the Galaxy listeners, you hear us talk all the time. Tonight we have a special guest, Mr. Drew Karpyshyn, like musician, like suspicion, is with us tonight, and I can tell you that for Nick, for Alfie, myself, for Brent Dykeman, who's not here. The books that he's written related to Star Wars are some of our Mount Rushmore books. So to have him on our show means a lot. And Drew, I'm just going to let you take the wheel here. Thank you for being a part of the show. Welcome. And how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Really happy to be here with you, with y'all. I can say y'all now. I live in Texas, so been here 13 years. So I think I'm legally allowed. Sorry, it's all y'all because there's more than 3 of you. That's what they explained to me. Y'all and then all y'all. So I'm happy to be here with all y'all. Yeah, great. Things are going great. My Kickstarter that I've been running for my new novel, Time Kings of Las Vegas. It's cracked 15,000 now, so it's going great. It's fully funded.
Wow.
Actually funded after only 4 days, so that was great. Hopefully people will check it out. It's a good science fiction, fun story. And if you go to the Kickstarter, I have a bunch of bonus reward packages that include signed copies of my Star Wars novels.
Oh,
so if you want like a signed Darth Bane with the new cover, like the new covers that they've got, you can get that in one of the packages. There's a new Revan cover coming out as well. I think it's coming in November, and those are available as well, although you're gonna have to wait till November to get the Revan part of that package. The rest of them should be shipping in October. But yeah, so if you're a Star Wars fan, definitely check it out. Lots of cool stuff there, all autographed. It's all going to be, mint off the shelf stuff. It's not going to be stuff I've had lying around my garage for a year or anything like that. And if there's any real crazy fans out there, you can even get the VIP packages where I'll meet you in Vegas, go for dinner. I'll buy dinner, can do interviews. I give you copies of all my books. It's a good deal. So hopefully people will check it out.
My daughter's 21st birthday is next year, and our plan for her is, she's the youngest, she's our baby. And our plan is to try to take all of us out to Vegas for her 21st. So I might look into that package. It might be a year from now, but I still might try to take you up on that.
Well, and if you don't, just let me know, because I go to Vegas like 5-6 times a year. That's partly why I wrote this book, The Time Kings of Las Vegas, because I just wanted a reason I could maybe expense some of my trips. So I thought if I can do a business proposition, we'll see if the accountant lets me expense those blackjack losses. Probably not.
Well, sounds like we're going to Vegas.
Awesome.
So I tell you what, before we get into all the things you've done with this Kickstarter kicking off and it being a science fiction novel, without getting too deep and giving us the ending, obviously, what are some juicy details you can give us of why we should, besides it being from you, which everybody knows you're going to write a good book, what are some good things about this that we should know going into the Time Kings of Las Vegas?
Well, it's a little different than the Star Wars novels. It is science fiction, but it's modern day, contemporary, set in modern day Vegas. Like I said, I go to Vegas 5-6 times a year. This is my love letter to Sin City. Sin City for me is just the most exciting, fun, crazy, wild place. And this is a chance for me to imagine if I had basically superpowers, what would it be like for me in Vegas? If I could use some kind of, I'll say magic, but it's not magic because there's like a science fiction underlying this. If I had some way to beat the damn casinos, this is how I would do it. So this is my book, imagining how I could do it. Of course, anyone who's read my stuff knows I tend to get a little dark. So the mob gets involved. You have some Area 51 conspiracy. Obviously, things do not go as planned for our main character. And I think people are really going to like it. It's just a fun action novel, a lot of humor, some pretty dark characters, some pretty sinister characters. Definitely, I'd say a couple of them are full on dark side, which seems to be my vein. I just write. That's all I write, right?
You hit that well in your books. I can tell you that. And I will say, between having Mark Thompson and Jonathan Davis on in the past, you had the right guys read do the audio versions of those books. They hit those notes perfect.
They did a great job. I would love to take credit for that, but I don't make that decision. But they just got the great timber quality, whatever you want to say, just that nice, dark, deep. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's fun to listen to your own books on audio. I will say it's kind of neat to hear someone else reading your words way better than you can ever read them yourself, honestly.
I think that would be a very wild thing to our friend Nick Shesky here, who's co-host. He wrote a short story, a Star Wars short story happening right around the New Hope era, right before or after that, Nick? I can't remember.
That's accurate. It's 5 short stories.
Yeah.
During the time between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. Now, Joe uses that you wrote short stories. I dabbled during COVID because I didn't have anything else going on. That's what that was. So we'll table it at that.
Well, but with us having Jonathan and Mark on in the past, I think I'm trying to push him behind the scenes, and Jonathan's already said yes, but I've got to get Mark to do a little reading, to maybe read one of the short stories in their voices.
Have you considered a Kickstarter, Nick? I'm just saying.
Hey, I've not considered it. I need to start considering it, I guess.
So one thing I will tell you is I'm a guy who devoured all the Star Wars novels. I read everything, except I never jumped in on the darker novels. I was unicorns, rainbows, happiness. I wanted the Force to always be good and Jedi always to win. And then my friend Nick here said when we started the podcast, man, you got to check out these Bane and Revan books. And I'm like, I know, Nick, but I'm happy. I don't want to get in that dark stuff. and then he and I have done shows recapping the novels on here on our podcast. And again, it went from being like, oh, here's the Thrawn trilogy, and it's the only thing that I hold up here. And now it's like, well, now I've got that, and I've got the Bane trilogy, and I've got, and I was blown away, and it took me a long time. So I apologize to you because I should have bought the books a long time ago. But I've read them. I've listened to them on audiobook now, and I just they're some of my favorite Star Wars that's out there. So if you don't mind, guys, before I jump in, any quick questions from all the stuff we've covered so far? I don't mean to be grabbing hold of it. Go ahead, Nick.
Well, I don't know if it's as much of a question as it is a thank you. I feel like I should be calling you Mr. Karpyshyn for
God, please
how
do not.
I won't do it, I promise. But so I've talked about it ad nauseum on this podcast and what we've done. In 2005, when Revenge of the Sith came out, I'm dating myself, but I was in 7th or 8th grade, and I watched that movie, and I came home, and I was morbidly depressed because that was it. Like, there was nothing else. That was as far as we go. They're not making any more Star Wars. And I went to bed that night. I woke up the next morning. I said, well, if that's it, there has to be other Star Wars somewhere else. And so I went to my public library, and I got as much Star Wars stuff as I could possibly find and just started checking it out of the library. And one of the ones that I checked out was a graphic novel, and it was Jedi vs. Sith. And it was the, Tomcat, Rain. Now, and this is where I do have a question, because I'm curious of what preceded what, because I just don't know what preceded, but it was the graphic novel of basically Bane before the thought bomb, kind of coming out and doing this. And then shortly after that, the novel I picked up and I read was, Path of Destruction, right at the very beginning. And I was like, wait a minute, where have I feel like I've read this before. And it was, oh wait, I have read this before. This was in the graphic. So like every time that I read that book series now, I have the graphic novel and that as well. I'm so curious from your, how did that process even start? Was that something that already existed that you jumped onto? Was that, tell me everything.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, those comics actually do predate the Bane novels, Bane story that I wrote. And the novels are told from the perspective of the main characters are mostly the children who get swept up in the Jedi versus Sith war. But I'd say the last third of the Bane novel is sort of a retelling of those comics. A lot of the similar events. Bane is more of a background character in the comics. I mean, he's there, but he's not the primary character. Just to give people some perspective, because I know the comics are not very well known, actually. They were written first, and what happened, the way I got the whole Bane gig, for want of a better term, was I was coming off of KOTOR, Knights of the Old Republic, the video game, where I was the lead writer. And obviously it had done really well. I think it came out in 2003. Everything's a blur. It's been a long time. 2002, 2003 came out, had a lot of success. Obviously we did really well. And I was writing some books on the side, and I approached the Star Wars people. I technically approached them before at Gen Con when it was still in Milwaukee or Wisconsin. Sorry, was it in Milwaukee, Geneva? And I'd said to them, I'm working on this video game. I've written books. I'd love to write Star Wars novels. And they kind of went, yeah, we'll get back to you. We'll get back to you. And then after the game became a big hit, they came to me and said, hey, this Old Republic stuff you guys are doing is great. We don't have any Old Republic stuff. Can you do something for us? And that's when I kind of said, well, I'm really interested in exploring the Sith. At the time, there wasn't a lot of Sith stuff. And, talked to them about some potential stuff. And I was familiar with the comics. And I said, I think there's more I can do with Darth Bane. And I think he's a really fascinating character. And his impact on the Star Wars universe is huge. So I, came up with some ideas, pitched them some ideas, and they were like, great, we love it, run with it. And then I just tried to make sure I tied it in the comics as best I could, so that I always want to try and respect other source material within the Star Wars universe. That's one of the things. You're always working with other people's stuff, and they're working with your stuff, and you want to try to treat it with respect. So that's how I got into that. So the comics did predate the books. Yeah.
Wow.
Go ahead, Alfie.
Okay, so as I was doing research for this, I read those novels quite a while ago, but I was relooking over some quick notes. I did not realize that you were the lead writer on the Knights of the Old Republic game. And at that moment, I threw everything away because that blew my mind. I hate that Brent is not here, because Brent he's always saying he wants something new. And to not be in the time when that game came out, to realize how new that story was. I mean, I can remember seeing a trailer, I think maybe at Celebration 2 or somewhere like that. I know that's kind of that's really dating myself to think that we didn't used to just sit around and watch trailers for video games and movies nonstop, because you couldn't do it. But that was, like you were talking about your desire to write about the Sith, that was like one of the first big immersions into the Sith story. And it just really blew me away. And those characters are still around in a game that I play today. Karth and Juhani, Revan, Light and Dark. I mean, I would just like to know more about how detailed were you allowed to get into that story? And did you have plans, or see the potential of expanding on the Revan story just from that game?
Yeah, so that game was it was the first game I was actually a lead writer on. I'd only been in video games writing for a few years before we got that chance. And I will have to say, I have to give a lot of credit to the entire writing team, but there's two people in particular that I want to call out. So the first is a writer named David Gator. He's done a lot of BioWare stuff. A lot of people know him as the lead writer from the Dragon Age series. He was actually the one who came up with the Sith code. It wasn't me. A lot of people think I did. I'm like, no, I just stole that right from David. He came up with it for the planet Korriban when you go there. And he basically just took the Jedi code and kind of, gave the mirror image of it, the flip side of it. So that's one thing I will call out. David did a great job with that. And the other one person for KOTOR I want to call out is a man named James Olin, who was one of the key founders at BioWare, creative director, still doing a lot of work. Still currently my boss at a company called Archetype. We're working on some science fiction games that I can't really say anything about. But James was the ultimate Star Wars nerd. We played Star Wars Trivial Pursuit with him, and he'd just run the board. Like, he just gets the thing and you're like, okay, we're done. He would never get a question wrong. Just, it's a matter of how many rolls it takes him to finish getting around the board and get all the pie pieces. So I do want to say, like, I didn't do it all on my own, but when we got the opportunity, we knew right away we wanted to do something in the Old Republic. Again, they had the comics out, but there wasn't much else out there. And we just thought it was a really fresh and different take on Star Wars, a way to explore it, but still feel true to the core Star Wars experience. Most of us had grown up when the original trilogy came out in theaters. I was 6 when the first movie came out. It's one of the first movies I vaguely remember seeing. Yeah, my mom, I remember standing outside a theater. In my mind, there's like 10,000 people, but I was 6 years old. So, probably wasn't that many, but I just remember being in line and slowly like working our way toward the front of the theater as we went our way in. So, and then I would, for Halloween, I went as Jawa, and then I went as a Tusken Raider, and then I went as a Jawa, and then I went as a Tusken Raider, and then I went as Darth Vader. So we just wanted to capture that same sense of magic that we felt when we saw Star Wars for the first time. And we felt going into the Old Republic was the best way to do that, because it gave us the freedom to just tell stories that didn't have to tie into the films directly. Mm-hmm. And we were really lucky. The team at LucasArts at the time was the branch of the Lucas Empire. It was their game division. And they basically said, yeah, tell the story you want to tell. Do what you want to do. They were smart enough, I'll say, to step out of our way and let us do our thing, which if anyone's worked in video games, they know that's sometimes very rare. So, we had a really good opportunity, and I'd like to think we made the most of it, but yeah, it was a blast working on it. And I do remember toward the end putting in some really long hours on the game, you know, testing it, playing it before we're going to ship, and just thinking to myself, like, man, we have a home run here. We have knocked it out of the park. And that sounds arrogant, but you know, as a fan of Star Wars, like testing the game and playing it, I'm like, this just gives me what I want. This is
still here.
Star Wars game.
Yeah. I mean, how many people still are playing those games 20 years later, right?
It just got re-released, didn't it?
And they're still making like visual cinematic trailers.
Yeah.
Which are stunning,
They are
beautiful, and amazing.
Go ahead, DDoc.
they're redoing it for next gen consoles right now, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think it has. Yeah. So they had that, you know, they had that trailer with Revan that was like incredible. I mean, it looked amazing. So I guess they're just going to be remaking the game to your exact story again.
Well, see, I'm not involved with it, so I don't really know. I know a few people who are involved in the project, but we're pretty careful about not talking shop because, you know, we don't want to accidentally say something that gets anyone in trouble. So we're always super careful. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what they come up with. Yeah,
we have we obviously, the four of us, have plenty of questions for you, and we're going to zoom through those. But at the same time, as you know, Drew, from you and I on social media, we were asking people for questions, and first one I'll read is from Zane Palmer. Zane also is an author, and you know what? I know authors like to support other authors. Zane has his second book. It's called Crude Space, that will be available November 29th of this year. So for that Crude Space, November 29th, 2022, from Zane Palmer, check that out. Go look it up. Always good to support, you know, aspiring authors. But he asked, and I think we've answered some of this, but there's probably some things we didn't hit completely. When did you start writing Time Kings of Las Vegas, and what are you working on next?
So Time Kings of Las Vegas, I've actually been kicking around for several years. I talk about it a little bit on the Kickstarter, but it was something I've been working on for quite a long time. It was just the thing I did in the background that was different than my normal video game style franchise work. So Star Wars, Mass Effect, the things I'm most known for. I've done a lot of books and games, and this was sort of my escape from that. It was a different type of story in that it was modern day. Of course, it's still science fiction. I mean, I love sci-fi, so I'm not going to go too far out of my comfort zone. And I kind of have been working on that book off and on for several years, and just kind of never really felt like there was a home for it. You know, it's very easy to get put into a box. And I mean, a lot of people know me as the Old Republic guy. I'm okay with that. There's worse things to be, believe me. I kind of like being the Old Republic guy. But yeah, I just wasn't sure, you know, if people would want to do it, if publishers would want to be interested in it. And then I finally just decided, you know what, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go on Kickstarter. I'm going to take a shot and just see if fans want to support it. And luckily, it's worked out great. I've gotten a lot of support. Like I say, fully funded it in those 4 days. So yeah, I've been kicking that around for quite a while, and it was really just a matter of getting the courage to put it out there, which for any writer is tough. So, you know, Nick, I don't know if you've released your stories anywhere. I know how it is as a writer. You're always like, I still need to fix them up, but man,
they are very much hidden on the hard drive.
I've read them. I've read some.
Joe's read them. We're about 3/4 of the way through the second story, so
yeah,
we're figuring out. It's my guilty pleasure, if you will.
Yeah.
There you go. Any new questions, Alfie, DDoc, Nick, before I hit with another one? Okay, so I'll get you with one question, or just bounce on some things, and then we'll just bounce another question off of a follower on social media. But you were born in Edmonton, is that correct?
Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Are you
a big hockey fan?
So I grew up with the Oilers when Wayne Gretzky was there, Mark Messier was there, the glory years, winning all the cups. So I was a huge hockey fan, and I'll be honest, I think I got really spoiled because when, you know, the Oilers were averaging one year, the Oilers alone averaged 5 goals a game as a team. And then the scoring really dropped in the 90s. You know, the New Jersey Devils started playing the trap, and I kind of drifted away from hockey. I've been watching it a little bit recently. I'll watch the playoffs. Oilers are starting to be a little bit relevant again. But I've shifted more to basketball and the NBA and the Spurs.
Okay.
It's another nice team to get on. And interestingly, you probably have more of a question in there, but one of my favorite moments was when the Spurs were still winning their championships with Tim Duncan and that. There was a game, I think they were playing, might have been Oklahoma City. And when they go to announce the teams, they always, dim the lights, play some music. And for the Spurs, they played the Imperial March because we were the evil dark side, and I just was like, oh, this is perfect. I love it. I love it. This is so good.
That's awesome.
That is great. That is great. We'll bounce to another listener here. Adam Bomber on Twitter. Drew, do you have any thoughts on the animated take of Darth Bane in the later or the end of Clone Wars, the animated series? What did you think about that take on, I guess, the ghost or specter of Darth Bane?
My interpretation of that is, I don't know what this is. My interpretation. I don't know what the official thing is. I don't know what like Dave Filoni himself would say. I believe he was sort of the main driver behind that. For me, it was more a manifestation of what Yoda believed the dark side was, as opposed to actually Darth Bane's spirit. That's how I interpret it, because it didn't quite go in with what looks a little different. So that was sort of my interpretation. An interesting thing is originally they were going to have Revan and Bane in that scene.
Wow.
I think if you dig around on the internet, there's some like concept art from it and some storyboarding. And actually, I don't think it was that episode. I think they were going to do it earlier, and then the idea fell away, and then they kind of re-upped the idea with that Clone Wars episode, later on. But I always like when it's called out in other media or other people noticing it. That's the nice thing about Star Wars is it's this universe that goes in all directions with all these other people. So whenever they allude to something I've worked on, or call it out or reference it, I always get a little bit of a yay, a little thrill from that. So
you got it, Nick. Go ahead.
I'm not giving up hope that this new season of The Mandalorian, which we've seen so much of just on, and I say we've seen so much of, I've seen so much of because Alfie has sent me Reddit clips over and over and over again of trailers that have been leaked and stuff, and the bombed out dome of the Sundari and stuff like that. I am holding out hope because Revan was so closely tied with Mandalore that there's going to be some sort of tie-in at some point, even if it's like Drew, you need to know that I will be in Indiana fist bumping if at some point, Revan gets mentioned in Mandalorian, in some capacity.
There was a small tribute that was pointed out. A couple of people who I worked with. There's actually James Owen, I mentioned him before. He's the one who actually kind of noticed it first. In I don't remember which episode, but it's in The Mandalorian. I think it's the episode with Timothy Oliphant, where they actually have to kill a crate dragon and they use explosives. That was one of our quests in the original KOTOR game. And so we were watching it going, okay, this is weirdly familiar. And then like, oh, and I'm like, okay, that can't be a coincidence. That has to be an homage to us. That's how I interpret it. I'm interpreting it as a nice little homage to us, a nice little nod. And I'm like, oh, thank you. I'll take that cap.
Which is so cool because we had John Jackson Miller on the show as well too for the Kenobi series. And the whole time we were talking, I just kept trying to push back like, but wait, so you watched The Mandalorian, right? Like the whole first 2 episodes were literally your book. Like you watched that, right? And he was like, no, haven't seen it. Not totally sure what you're talking about. And that's so cool to hear, man, when we see that, we're like, yeah, I remember that. We did that. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Alfie, it looked like you were going to say something. Did you have something pop in your head?
Because in the game, didn't you get the pearl when you completed the quest?
I believe you did, but again, we're talking 20 years ago.
Right.
So
same here, but because when I saw that scene, that's what I thought of. I remember that mission and getting the pearl.
Yeah.
I as you guys know, a lot of us here on the show are big into collecting the action figures. So I look at it and I am so torn because I'm trying to purchase wisely, but I'm so desperately now wanting the dark and the light Revan. And I can't remember which one of you guys beat me to one of them at Alfie.
I
Beat
got the
me to
dark.
it. Yeah, he got the dark. And I think one of our listeners, Tom Line, got the light version of Revan. So here I was looking, going, oh, they both, yeah, okay. But those characters are absolutely so well done. I mean,
Yeah.
the 6-inch black version of Revan, both light and dark, just blow me away.
I don't know if you can see it. No, it's just out of frame on my camera. Let me see if I can get him in there. You probably can't see him beside the Darth Vader with the metal around his neck and the potato head Darth
yeah,
Vader.
yeah.
But there's a Revan figure over there on the back of my shelf there too. So
It's
I have all
gorgeous.
sorts of.
So I do have a question for you though, and it's related to the books and it's related to action figures. I haven't dug deep enough into this, but I was at a time in my life when these books came out, and I was older and I had kids and I was spending my money on school and ball teams and everything else. So I missed about a decade plus, 15 years of buying action figures, right? It's just like out of sight, out of mind. It's like I've got too many other things. I'm grown up now and I can't have time to do this. But of course, COVID rekindled all that for all of us. I think it allowed us to have free time. Was there ever a Lord Hoth or a Valentine Farfalla action figure made? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't believe so. So in the comics, this is one of the times I didn't stay the source material. Farfalla he's basically like half goat. Everything below the waist is a goat. He's got hooves. He's got like furry legs, and the artists, whatever, it's never really called out. It's just there if you look. Now you don't see it a lot because a lot of times you don't see the full body of the character. And in the books, as I said to people, I never said he didn't have goat legs. I just don't mention his legs. But I feel like if there had been a figure like that, like everyone would know about it. Like it's just so strange.
Yeah.
It almost would be like mythical, like the Star Wars Christmas special. You're just like, what the hell is going on here? Like, why has this guy got goat legs? So I'm suspecting there wasn't, or people would it would be something that comes up all the time when people talk about it.
And being a light side guy, I was drawn to those characters that first book right away. I was like, these are the guys I'm going to be rooting for.
Right.
And then I found out, just like watching just like watching the Americans, where you're thinking we shouldn't root for these two Russian spies, but by the end of Americans, I was rooting for them. Just like in these books, I was rooting for Bane and Xana. It totally did a mind flip on me there. So, but yeah, go ahead, Nick.
I'm so glad you mentioned the goat legs, because the first time I read it, again, I had read the comics before, and I'm reading it going, he didn't say anything about the goat legs. Like he did. Like, wait a minute, wait. But I actually appreciated the interpretation that you put in there as well, because it felt like when I read the comic the first time, I was like, wait a minute, this is like we're reading the Chronicles of Narnia right now, and he's a fawn that's just like running around in Star Wars. Like we've bridged too many gaps here. So I agree with you. You're right. If that character existed, that would be the most sought after action figure, because where else do you see any sort of alien species like that?
Well, I don't know how familiar you are with some of the really old comics. I think they were even Marvel, not the graphic novels, but actual comics. And if you're not familiar with it, look up Jax the Rabbit.
Oh yeah.
Jax is one of my favorites.
Star Wars, there's some weird, like, especially in the early days, there's some stuff that is out there. It is like out there.
I think, I was going to say, DDoc, I sent him Jax.
Yes. Jax the Rabbit. Oh my God. That is amazing.
Yeah, awesome. Anybody, I was going to go to another listener question. You got a question, DDoc? Go ahead.
Yeah. And this might be like, out of left field a little bit, but like when these guys introduced me to the EU. So as I said before, I'm currently listening to the audiobooks of Darth Bane. do you have imagine that there was a movie ever made about it. Did you ever have an actor in mind who would play Bane? Because as
Well,
I'm listening to it, I'm just picturing Tom Hardy, who played Bane in the Batman movies. But for some reason, I'm just like, this is Tom Hardy the whole time.
yeah, a lot of people said that. So when they first came out, a lot of people at the time, because it was still, he wasn't as old, a lot of people said Clancy Brown, who was the main villain in the old Highlander movie.
Really?
Yeah, so I don't know if people remember him. He's been in some other stuff too. He was a very popular choice, you know, good deep voice, tall, menacing looking. I mean, I'm like, look, Bane is this like giant, muscular, bald man. I'm like, well, obviously it's got to be The Rock. I mean, The Rock do evil? I don't know. Let's find out. So
bringing The Rock into Star Wars would be incredible.
But Tom Hardy's also, I mean, part of me is like, well, he already did a Bane, a different Bane. So I'm like, maybe he should just do all the Banes, right? Like, yeah.
I love it. I love it. I'll hop into another question. This one looks like it's from the Knights of the Old Republic, and I don't know much about this one at all, but Emma Thrax, and I think you saw this, Drew. Emma Thrax asked about, I was wondering if Drew could speak more about Juhani's portrayal with her friend, Balaya, and female Revan. Quite a bit of her romance dialogue was cut, but is still in the game files. I don't know if it was part of a treading carefully or other reasons. And again, this is a new one for me because I've never played any of the games, but I've read the novels.
Yeah, so I don't know what the official position of BioWare is or was. BioWare's always been very big on inclusion. We're trying to always push borders, big on inclusion. And keep in mind, this was 2002, maybe 2001 when we were making this. And keep in mind, Star Wars is very risk averse with romance stuff. So we wanted to have Juhani basically be gay character, but we had to be very, very subtle about it, to the point where a lot of people, we thought we were subtle enough, and we were kind of told, no, not subtle enough. So we had to pull stuff out. So honestly, I thought we pulled so much out that nobody would ever get it. But obviously that was not the case, because a lot of people kind of picked up on those little clues. And then once people were able to dig into the files, they were able to find stuff, you know, that was sort of left over. So it was something at the time we kind of wanted to push. And I don't honestly know whether it was internal because we were worried what someone would say, or it was external and we tried to get it. You know, I don't know who pushed us away from it. So I don't want to blame anyone or say anything. Unfortunately, that's just the way it went. But yeah, a lot of people see that. So, you know, I don't know if we can fully take credit for like opening the door to having a gay character in Star Wars, because we kind of didn't, but we kind of thought about it. So I don't know. That was just sort of the way we go. It was interesting though that it's sort of in the same vein, but not quite. Anyone who's read the Bane novels, at the end of the second novel, there's an incredibly graphic, gruesome scene that the Jedi stumble across when they find the remains of the big battle. And it was like serial killer crazy. And I wrote it going, yeah, they're gonna totally make me change this. Not a word. But Xana, as in her undercover missions, she was seducing a character. And I had one scene where she grabbed him and pulled him down onto a bed. End of the scene. Like, it just ends. And they were like, no, she can't pull him onto a bed. And I was like, really? They're like, they can kiss, but they have to stay standing. And I was like,
wow.
But the decapitations and stuff are good. And they're like, oh yeah, it's fine. So there was some funny, you know, and I mean, I get it. They're trying to hit a certain, I don't know if demographic's the right word, but they're trying to sort of remain family friendly. But I'm like, boy, Star Wars is a lot of like arm chopping and dismembering and severed limbs. I'm like, yeah, maybe you're looking at the wrong things.
You got it. Alfie, DDoc, or Nick, any questions going across there?
Yeah, real quick, you know, talking about influences, I've always wondered how, because I consider it to be one of the best endings to a video game. How did that ending to the original Knights of the Old Republic come about? I mean, I don't want to spoil anything, but I
Right.
mean, like you said, this is a 20-year-old game. But
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. If you haven't
is.
played it
as
yet,
far as
shame
the
on you.
ending goes, that revelation at the end was a shocker.
Yeah.
And
So, I mean, again, the original idea for that twist was James Olin. He was, our relationship was often James would have an idea and then I had to make it come to life. That's how I look at our relationships, or me and the rest of the writing team. But then the way we executed it, we did have actually a specific inspiration. It was shortly after the movie The Sixth Sense had come out. So I don't know if people are familiar with that movie. Again, are we spoiling something that's 25 years old at this point, 23 years old? I don't know. But the ending of The Sixth Sense did a lot of cinematic techniques. They cut back to things that had happened before. The way they did their revelation that reminded you of all the clues that were there, setting it up. I love that. I thought that was just amazing. And at the time, it was mind-blowing. It was so mind-blowing that movies do it so much now that viewers go in expecting a twist. It's really hard to surprise viewers at this point. But at the time, twists were less expected.
Yeah.
I think now if we released KOTOR, way more people would see the twist coming really early, because it feels like it's been done a lot of times now. People are just more used to those kinds of things. But we really looked at the way The Sixth Sense had done it and the techniques they used, the narrative techniques, the cinematic techniques. And we really wanted to lean into that. And I'm really pleased. Now, if people go and watch the video on YouTube or something like that, I mean, it's a 20-year-old video game, right? The graphics are not there. There's a lot of, it's dated, you can tell, but I still think it's pretty effective. And at the time, it really was sort of cutting edge type stuff. The way we combined the narrative for the game and the revelation and, brought it home. So, kudos to our cinematics team and everyone who was involved in that, making it really, really land.
Nick, go ahead.
Okay, so in that same vein, if you read the final book, Dynasty of Evil, right? That's the final one.
And I'm going to
Okay.
throw this in, Nick, real quick. One, if you go to Drew's website, by the way.
Yes, I know.
You for those who are listening, Nick's going to ask this question. Go to his site, because his site is awesome. He says what's on his mind, and he'll just tell you, dang it, if you don't like it, go on to the next thing. I love how blunt you are in your site. Go ahead, Nick.
And I love how blunt it is, and I love where it's at. I know that we're going to have people that are not going to go to the website and check it out. At the same point, I'm assuming that the response that you wrote, so at the very end of the book, there's this moment, and again, spoiler, whatever, screw it. There's this moment where you're left grasping, going, wait a minute, did Bane just possess Xana?
Mhm.
And is he now, owning her body, right?
Mhm.
Fast forward to Rise of Skywalker.
Right.
Now we have, I am the Sith. I'm all the Sith that I've ever been. I know you wrote the article and you said, what you said. I'm curious for you. Are there any new thoughts as to when you write this? Did he actually, was that her was that him or was that her?
So,
you know what I'm saying?
For me, I'll tell you flat out now, maybe the book will get written, maybe it won't. From my vein of thinking, what it was Xana, but there was a part of Bane had been infected her, corrupted,
Right.
There was a part there. So my plan, if they ask me to do a sequel, and maybe they still will, so maybe I'm spoiling it, but it's been a long time. I don't know.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so, Drew.
Yeah.
Come on, let's hang on to it.
But for me, a lot of that was going to be that part getting stronger and stronger, and her trying to find a way to rid herself of it or control it, or that wasn't the whole story, but that was going to be a big part of the story. Was this, how much of him is still in there? How direct it is? How is it a consciousness? Is it, is it just a sensation, or is he like physically in there trying to bust out? It's interesting because I play with that a little bit in my Chaosborn novels as well, which is the fantasy series I wrote, where there's a character who you think is destroyed, but is actually trapped inside this talisman, and they start trying to take over another character. And I actually really enjoyed writing it. It was a lot of fun. I mean, I'm not the only person who's written something like that. Obviously, this has been done before in literature. But it really kind of made me wish that I had gotten a chance to do that with the Bane series as well, with those characters. So, you know, I kind of was like, well, you won't let me do it in Star Wars. I'm going to do it in my own book. I'm going to write my own series.
So a couple things on this. One, I think all of us agree, if Kathleen Kennedy, if Lucasfilm is looking for a next trilogy or something, Darth Bane, those novels don't conflict with anything that we know of in any of the current stuff. So I'm just throwing in my 2 cents worth that if anybody from Lucasfilm is listening, because we have Drew on tonight, every Star Wars fan would say, go make this into a trilogy, and every Star Wars fan will be happy.
And, you know, I'm going to second that. And I will also add in, you know, it's a very different look at the way the light and dark side work. And you're right. It doesn't affect any of the current movies. Be a great standalone, you know, 8-episode series.
True. I agree. Now,
just saying, I'm here. Anyone?
I'd love to see Revan too.
Yes, 100%. I'll stick with Xana, and then we can go on to Revan as well. But for me, Xana, I'll ask the question Nick asked: Do you picture somebody in your head as who would play that character in a movie? And then 2, I think anybody who's read those books and seen the mind games that Xana can play on characters is some of the most harsh, real. DDoc, prepare yourself, because some of the scenes,
Terrifying.
yeah, literally
Terrifying.
scary stuff in a Star Wars book. Xana is it. So I think a great character for future films, and Star Wars is doing a great job with Jyn Erso, Rey, Ahsoka. There are some great females, but again, all more leaning towards the light.
Right.
Bring me a dark Xana like this, and I think it would just boom. So, one, thank you for making that scary, terrifying Xana character. But do you see any person you envision as being that character if they ever made a movie?
Yeah, it's tough for me because I just start naming like actresses that I like, stuff they've done. I mean, Anna Taylor-Joy is just amazing and everything. She might be getting a little too old, which sounds crazy, but Xana's pretty young.
Yeah.
The other one, Haley Stanfield, I like a lot. She's done a lot of really good stuff. And she was in the recent Marvel Hawkeye. I believe she was in Hawkeye. But the thing that for me kind of sells it is if she can do dark. It's going to sound funny, but if anyone has watched Dickinson on Apple TV, it's this weird comedy thing about Emily Dickinson, who's this, you know, famous American poet, very gothic. I thought there's a lot of stuff in there that I was like, oh, she can do some dark stuff. It's interesting. So I think she would be a great pick. But honestly, they might be better off. A lot of times they seem to do their best when they find someone who isn't as well known. I mean, if you look at sort of the newer stuff, like say Daisy Ridley, I mean, I know she had done stuff, but she wasn't that level of famous, right? It kind of allows characters to inhabit the Star Wars character rather than you seeing them as someone playing them.
Right. So going into that incredible mind power that she had, was there anything that came to you? I mean, because this was a brand new power that we've not seen any Jedi or Sith or Jedi use. Did anything come to you, or like how did it come to you to say this is what we're going to give her as the special gift she has?
Yeah, I just wanted something that felt different. I also wanted something that thematically tied into, oh my God, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the planet. Not Nath. Oh man. Wow, this is terrible. This happens to me all the time with my own stuff. Everyone makes fun of me,
Alfie,
but
you guys
I'm like,
this.
You got to remember, I've done 14 books and 10 video games, and I have 19 versions of those in my head because what you see is the final version. I'm writing versions, so it's a mess. Nathema, no.
Was it in one of the books? I'll find it. You go ahead.
Whatever. The planet that the final battle takes on,
okay,
is infused with dark side energy. So I wanted her to be able to tap into that in a way that was unique as well. Wow, that's terrible.
Ambria.
Yeah,
I think.
And then the lake. There's like a dark side, corrupted lake.
No.
Right now, fans of the book are going, "You're an idiot. How do you not know this?"
We've no, you're not. We've all consumed so much Star Wars that we forget more than we know. We've got some regular standard questions that we ask, so we can do those. DDoc, why don't you hit him with Brent's typical question?
I'm screwing up my muting. So there's a little bit of a funny story that goes along with us. It has to do with Count Dooku's lightsaber hilt and the curve. And I know that I think, what did he say that Joe would call you? You guys would call Count Dooku Stumpy, I'm pretty sure.
Stumpy, yeah.
Yes. So yeah, his hilt used to be made fun of, which I actually do like his hilt. So we like to ask people what their favorite lightsaber hilt in Star Wars is when they come on Rule of the Galaxy podcast.
Wow. I mean, I don't know if I would have a favorite hilt, but for me, one of the things that and I think it's a little bit touched on in the Bane novels, the idea of having like a unorthodox hilt is an advantage, because to me, what you see in a lightsaber duel is the surface of an ocean, and there's so much going on beneath, because you got to remember, the Force allows you to look into the future, right? To see things that haven't happened yet. And if both people are doing that constantly, you're sort of seeing 100 potential moves that you could do, your opponent could do, they could counter, and you could counter. There's all this going on. Plus, you're both using the Force to make sure the other guy doesn't turn off your lightsaber, right? Everyone's like, why don't they just use the lightsaber, turn the other saber off? I'm like, because they're not dumb, and the other person's thought of that. And some of your energy is always going into keeping the other person from messing with your stuff, right? Don't let them untie your shoelaces. Don't let her, don't let her make your fly come down so you have to zip it up in the middle of a fight. It's like you're constantly doing all this stuff below the surface. So something as small as having a strange handle that you hold differently just messes it up, because when there's so much going on, you start to fall into patterns, and you're like, okay, they're flexing their muscles to this way on the fingers, which means they're going to try this move. But if it's a configuration of a handle you haven't seen before, it could give you the tiniest advantage. It's like being a left-hander in a lot of these sports, tennis or boxing or anything like that. Being a lefty just throws people. So, I mean, I totally ducked your question, but for me, it's always a fascinating way to look at it, because I'm like, people are like, well, that makes no sense. I'm like, yeah, but maybe there's an advantage to this thing. Maybe it throws the opponent off.
Okay, we can live with that. Alfie, go ahead.
Wasn't that the whole point I was trying to make the day of like the 500 text messages about Palpatine's fighting style?
You did jump into
Yes,
that quite a
that's
bit.
right.
Yes. And it was an awkward one, and that slow motion spin should not have killed anyone, but I don't think they were expecting the slow motion spin. So that's what got everyone. So I agree, Alfie. I'm 100%
In fighting
on
with
your
the
page.
tip
And
of the
tip,
lightsaber.
which we
He
later
did a
find
lot
out.
of stabbing. A lot of stabbing.
Yes. And Ray did a replica of that at the end of Force Awakens, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Correct? So
Fair enough.
Drew, is there a Star Wars movie, and is there a favorite Star Wars character that brings you to Star Wars, that makes you think of Star Wars? It's your like heart of Star Wars.
I mean, again, being old school, I just think Empire Strikes Back is just amazing. It is also probably the darkest of the films, which is kind of right up my alley. I mean, all my stuff is fairly dark. And I'm just old school. Like Darth Vader to me is the most iconic villain of our lifetimes. Like, crossing, not just in science fiction, not just in just crossing everything, right? Darth Vader. I mean, there's lots of other cool things in Star Wars, but Vader to me is just head and shoulders, not because he's 7 feet tall, but head and shoulders above everyone else. Yeah, once you have Darth Vader, it's not really a fair contest. So you take Vader out of the equation, and if you take all of my stuff out of the equation, I mean, I actually liked Daisy Ridley's character a lot. I thought she was a really interesting take on it. Especially the first movie, I really liked her character, what they did with her. Just felt really fresh, really different to me. I was a big fan of what they did there. And I really liked the idea of John Boyega's character as well in that, especially coming off of the kind of Revelations, right word, but once it was like, yeah, they used to use clone troopers where everyone was literally a clone. And then, various things happened. And now, they're raising children to be this. And, he was born into this life. He had no choice. He became this and now he's trying to step away from it. Just a lot of interesting stuff going on there, and both of them are just, I think, really strong actors as well.
Anybody? I've got a couple more questions. Anybody else have a question that I'm not hitting? Go ahead before I jump in on another one. Okay, go ahead.
I'll
Alfie.
go. Maybe I was really far off on this, but was it just me, or the first time seeing The Force Awakens with Kylo Ren and Daisy Ridley as Rey, seeing them together immediately made me think of Basilisk and Darth Revan.
That's interesting.
A lot of
I hadn't
similarity.
thought of that, but I mean, the dynamic is similar, probably. I think for me, the big difference is, at least in the way we presented them in the games, was when you first meet Basilisk, she is the experienced one who is,
Right.
Teaching and instructing, and Revan is the one who doesn't know as much, which is kind of the flip side of the Kylo Daisy. Kylo.
Yeah, the story wasn't there quite so much, but just the visual. When I saw the mask,
there probably was the visual did remind me, and I think I don't even think anyone's denied it. Like, Revan was inspired by Darth Vader, and then I think Kylo Ren was then inspired by Revan. So it's not like, I'm not going to say they ripped Revan off, because Revan had a strong Vader inspiration. It's all thematic, but I really,
I want to be clear too that I'm not, that's not dig or anything. I was just growing up with that story, I saw it and I was like, oh man, that is kind of what I want to see right there.
Yeah, when I saw Kylo Ren, I was like, oh wow, that is, again, an homage to the Revan aesthetic, right?
Very much.
I really, and I like that. I see that and I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's,
one thing that, and it's not my question, but just an observation off of that discussion point, is this is a new trilogy, and here we are with a whole new group of fans that have entered Star Wars through this. I personally, and I think all of us here on this podcast, really wish they were pushing Kylo/Ben as far as books, comics, action figures. Rey after this, as far as books, comics, action figures. Alfie's mentioned it a few times before. This new trilogy did some really good marketing to get it going, but they've let a whole generation of people who are way into this just kind of let it. It's like, okay, that trilogy's over. We're going to put the marketing away for any of those characters. I don't know if you feel the same way or not, but I watched the original trilogy, and let's face it, there was not a downtime from 1977 through 1985. And even then they were like, can we make something else work? Can we make something else work? So I don't know, just an observation off that real quick. If you had comments, great. If not, I got a question for you. So go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I do find it interesting that, with all the things they're doing, all the TV series and everything that's rumored to be out, even, I haven't really heard anything about either one of those characters in any way. Mm-hmm. Right. So, there's something to what you say. They're almost trying to, I don't want to say distance themselves from them, but they've set them aside for whatever reason. That's, again,
I agree, Drew. I think they're scared to touch them. I think there's some fear of, man, we're gonna piss everybody off again if we jump in and we start touching these characters again. And so we'll do something that will say, it's like when Kathleen Kennedy came out and said, we're gonna do more with these characters in the future. But it's kind of like we're driving your dog up, like the dog's gonna go to the farm, somewhere out there, and I'm hoping that's not true, but it kind of feels that way.
Go ahead, DDoc.
I mean, I have kids, so I don't know if you guys, I know some of you guys have watched the Lego specials, but they do really bring Rey and Poe and everybody back in those Lego specials. And I think that's because they're just like, they're going to make a fun Lego special. And I think they let the creators just do what they want with it, essentially.
So,
and basically, like, it's almost like what Drew was talking about with KOTOR, how they pretty much let them write it, and it turned out to be something that people still talk about today, years later. It's like, I think when it comes to movies, they're so controlling of narrative and direction and creative differences and all that stuff, where it's like sometimes you just got to let people create something and you can have something great when it's all said and done. I mean, I think that's what they do with these Lego things, and when they bring Ray and Finn and everybody in, and that's why they use those
I want
characters.
to know how Lego gets the deal they get, because like when they did that Lego movie and it's like, okay, you have Batman and Darth Vader all like hanging around together. I mean, I think there was Marvel characters in there too. DC, like it's just everybody. I'm like, how did you get away with that? How do you get the rights to all this? I'm like, what is going on here? Oh, Gandalf, I think, was in it. I think there's a Gandalf in there. I'm just like,
yep.
What? How does Lego get away with this? I could never do this.
DDoc, to your point, enter The Last Jedi. Right?
Okay.
Enter The Last Jedi. We're going to let somebody go create something and do something different. And then it goes off the rails and the fan base revolts. And now we're currently where we're at. Now we're in this mire of uncertainty where we don't know what to do and who to go to. And this is where, again, not just because we have Drew on the show, but I would say, let's go to something that we know that hits, something that doesn't land in the timeline.
We're going to push. Yes, we're going to push for that. We're going to, I think we're going to
give me some Bane.
That's right. Alfie, go ahead.
Movies aside, I would just like, and I've said it, you said it, and, I've said it enough times. There's characters in these stories that, kids really like, that we really like, and to just stop supporting them. Why has there not been a Rey Skywalker figure? Why has there no Ben Solo figure? We all played with the Luke Skywalker lightsaber as a kid. Why is there not a yellow kids lightsaber?
The expensive one. The expensive one's out. Yeah.
Not everything has to be $250 and they only make 500 of them. We get this argument all the time. People say kids don't play with toys, but if you don't make the toys, they never have a chance to play with them.
I feel like me bringing up that little segment was Steve Glosson jumping in and derailing us all. So I apologize. But yes, good points by all. Drew, I have some favorite characters, and I'll probably butcher their names, but I was reading them. I've listened to them, but you know how this thing goes. I'm 51. I forget what I had to eat yesterday. But between Revan and between Bane, obviously I told you, Farfalla and Hoth, two of my very favorites. I want their action figure. I think what was his Padawan? Johan, I think. Johan was the one who Farfalla took over after Hoth died. So those three as far as Jedi, but in the Bane series, Caleb, Sarah, and Lucia. Those three characters. Was there anything that made you create or think about these characters? Because in a world where we have Jedi and Sith killing each other, you have these three normal humanoid characters who don't have Jedi powers, don't have Sith powers, but they're very important to the story. Was there anything that brought you to those, or did you just feel like they were a good part of the story, or tell us a little bit about those characters?
So the Caleb character first appeared in those comics. The scene where Bane threatens his daughter happened there. And I from the comics, I thought that was such an interesting character, because he's a character that has a different kind of power and strength, like the power to heal Bane, tries to resist, isn't able to. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And then I kind of put that in the back of my head, and I was like, okay, what can come up later? And I mean, I hadn't planned out the second or third books when I wrote the first book. When I wrote the second book, I hadn't planned out the third book. I just, as a writer, I feel like there's always hooks I can go back to. And, taking the Caleb character and looking at, where do I go with this? And then thinking, oh, there was this daughter and, probably wants revenge. Like, I'm like, so how do you get revenge against the Sith when you're just a person, right?
Right.
So I found that was an interesting idea. And then, of course, that's a fairly integral part of the third book. So yeah, I just found that character really intriguing. And, if I was in the Star Wars universe, I'm not going to be a bounty hunter. I'm not going to be a Sith Lord. I'm not going to be a Jedi. I mean, even if I had the power, I don't have the discipline to do any of this. So I'm like, what do I do in that universe? How do I get by? So sometimes I like to imagine just the ordinary person and see how they fit in among these, larger than life, galaxy shaping figures.
Nope. And Lucia, if I'm not mistaken, she was with the Gloomwalkers. Was she not the military member who was in his crew in the first book?
I believe so. Now I'm trying to recall the names.
She became the bodyguard for Sarah in the third book, but she was a military person with Bane in the first book.
Right. And
you brought it all the way back around to the third book, having a character who knew him from that time. Again, sorry to pick your brain on it, but there were characters that stood out to me quite a bit. I don't know if you guys, Nick and Alfie, remember those characters that much, but I'm a big believer that if you can write a movie or a book and wrap something in from the first to the third, it's like Stranger Things, what they've done this season, to where they're basically rehashing seasons 1, 2, 3 and wrapping every storyline up in season 4. To me, that's wonderful storytelling. That's great TV or book or movie making. That's what you did in this. When I saw Caleb and Sarah come back in 2 and 3, Lucia come back around, my personal opinion was, okay, you're exactly right. You probably didn't have this plan when you wrote book 1, but to weave it back in book 2 or book 3, it just wrapped everything together even more for me. So that's just my 2 cents. And then the character from Darth Bane, and again, I apologize if I butcher it, Candoris Ordo or Candoris Ordo.
Oh, Candoris.
Candoris Ordo, the Mandalorian mercenary. Again, as Nick mentioned earlier, I think a character like that being mentioned, the mask being mentioned, something like that in a Mandalorian series would just blow people's socks off. They'd have to go read these books because of that, right? So anything that brought you to him or any thoughts?
Well, Candoris was a big part of our KOTOR storyline, the game from the video game as well. So a character that a lot of people really connected with, and was our into the Mandalorian culture, which obviously it's one of the non-Sith, non-Jedi, probably the most popular non-Sith, non-Jedi aspect of Star Wars, if I had to guess. So that was just our way, and I wanted to tie that in and stick with that. And again, showing sort of even if you don't have force powers in the explicit Jedi Sith way, you can still be very powerful and influential and impactful. I mean, depending the arguments you read, the force manifests in different ways. And, there's always this, I love this fan theory that like, who's the most powerful force user? You're like, it might be Han Solo. Because look at all the crazy lucky things. Like, it's not just luck. There's something else going on. He just might be this intuitive force user, doesn't even know. He's literally like, I don't believe in that. Funky religions and hokey religions. But things work out for him. He's like, I'll make up a plan as I go and I'll figure it out. And you're like, well, maybe that's the force working through you, Han. Like, so. I kind of like that little fan theory that he might be the most powerful force user in the galaxy, just doesn't know it.
I think it's absolutely great. I've been monopolizing. Nick, DDoc, Alfie, any questions? I do have another follower who brought some things up, but go ahead, Nick.
No, I was just going to comment, and I think the beauty of being able to, I thought that was one of my favorite parts of the 3-part trilogy, was being able to loop in characters that we saw from the beginning that kind of feel like throwaway characters. Right. So like when he's part of, again, I love a good origin story. So to take, Des all the way back to Cordis, Cordis, I think is the right word, right? Or the right planet where he's
the mining world.
Yeah. The mining planet, and to take him all the way from like, here's where he's starting to figure out that he has it. And then he comes in touch with the Gloomwalkers. For me, like that was one of the coolest parts of that story. And then to get all the way into book 3 and to go, wait a minute, hang on, same people that are coming around. To me, it was, again, this is probably my favorite trilogy. So I'll just level with that and say that I'm pumped that, man, we can take somebody from the beginning and again, that idea of, I'm fighting against the orders that I've been given, and I'm pushing through it, and I'm, circumnavigating my commander because, man, we're going to kill everybody in our unit if we keep doing what we're doing. Instead, let me just use the force and do what we're doing. To me, I thought that was such a cool cool narrative line, and then to tie that character in, I thought was great.
Agreed. Okay, so this is our last group of questions. What I want to do, and Drew, you tell me. We're obviously, you said we're a very Star Wars based show. Lady Phoenix on Twitter, great. Oh my gosh, she hit us with 3 or 4 questions.
Okay.
I'm gonna look through it real quick. One, she wanted me to say that you are her #1 author. She loves what you do. She had questions about Mass Effect Andromeda. She had questions about Shepard. She had questions about, what is your basic format of writing a novel? There we go. You know what? That one I feel like goes right into being able to answer here.
So for me, they always joke about, I only recently learned this. They say, are you a pantser or a planner? Do you fly by the seat of your pants or do you plan it? And I'm a planner. I plan it out. Like, I do an outline. I go chapter by chapter. I figure out every scene. Doing that lets me really get a lot of little details in that I can then loop in later. So that's one of the reasons I feel I am reasonably good at tying in all these like extra things, because I've done planning. Even if I haven't planned out the next book, I put a lot of time and effort into the little pieces in ways that as a writer, I know I can bring them back later. Potentially, I see what these are. Not everybody does that. I mean, most famously, Stephen King has said, I get an idea and I sit down and I start writing, I just see where it goes.
Wow.
And he's been pretty successful. I don't think you can argue with the methodology. But for me, I have to really plan things out, and I do that with any kind of story project, whether it's a game, whether it's a book. Obviously, as you start writing it, you're going to make edits and changes, and things will get tweaked and worked. But I won't really start writing until I'm confident I know where I want to end up, and I know mostly how I'm going to get there.
Okay, that's very cool, guys. Again, I'm a monopolizer. I don't want to keep Drew much longer, so I want to anything you've got, because we've all praised and said how much we love the book. So I want to make sure we get the right questions in. Go, DDoc.
So I have to ask, because as I said, I'm newer to the EU, but the Sabacc portion of Path of Destruction. So now that I'm hearing that you're such a fan of Vegas, did you really take advantage of that section? Because I got to say, I was so lost in that. I felt like I was in Casino Royale when I was listening to that whole section.
I did. And a lot of people have commented on that. And that was sort of my first like insider look. Like, I play a lot of poker, I play a lot of blackjack, I play a lot of games. I actually designed the Pazak game in KOTOR. That was me. I invented that. I came up with the rules. I didn't program it into the game because I'm not a programmer, but all the design of the game, how it worked was mine. For Sabacc, I kind of looked and found as many of the rules as I could that existed. And then I'm like, now how do I make a high stakes game of this? This is the kind of thing you'll also see in Time Kings of Las Vegas, because I really know the ins and outs of casinos and games and how they work, and card counting and all the little fun background stuff, and every scam that's been pulled on casinos. If you want something interesting, look up Phil Ivey and Baccarat. There's a whole thing where he was able to find a legal way to sort of manipulate Baccarat with to the tune of several $1 million.
I think I saw a documentary on that. Was there a documentary on that?
Yes, I believe there was. I believe there was. So yeah, for me, I love gambling and games of chance and the psychology of it all and the psychological warfare. Again, a big part of the Time Kings of Las Vegas novel, the new one on the Kickstarter. The Sabacc was sort of honestly probably my favorite scene to write. I was like, everyone's gonna hate this. Nobody wants to read Star Wars about essentially, poker. I mean, that's kind of what it is, right? It's the Star Wars version of high stakes poker. But I was like, I'll just write it because I want to write it. I like it. And then it's resonated with a lot of people. So I don't know if that means we're all just gambling addicts, or if it's just like people see how much I enjoy it and they pick up on that. But I appreciate you calling that out, because like I say, one of my favorite scenes ever.
That's one of my memorable parts so far, because the whole atmosphere of how the scene is written. I mean, you're in his head. You can envision how the Republic trooper who was getting a little out of sorts in it, getting a little angry at him, that he was going high stakes at the end. I don't know. It was just it was good because it's not like it's a Star Wars book where some of your best action is not just a lightsaber battle. It's two guys playing a card game, basically. So yeah,
And
you knocked it out with that.
I would say this, people talk about all the time the best Star Wars, right? What means Star Wars? Like when people watch currently The Mandalorian or Book of Boba Fett, though, that feels Star Wars, right? That Sabak scene right there, the Xana mind games when she's inside that palace, the scene where I'm blanking it now. Oh, when the Jedi try to kill Bane and Xana, and they put the guy in the closet, and then Bane almost kills himself with Force lightning. Those scenes right there, the battle between Xana and Bane towards the end, to me, those feel as much Star Wars as the Star Wars we see in movies and the animated series and the streaming. I don't know if you guys agree with me or not, but the reason it's so great is it just feels real. It feels like it's part of the whole, it's ingrained in it. So I want to tell you thanks for that, because to me, when you can say that and look at that, it's like, wow. I mean, something's just in a book of a character that mostly people played a game, know about, or whatever, means that much, or it's that cool. That's a pretty cool thing. So thanks for that. Alfie, sorry.
Yeah, just like you were saying, feels like Star Wars. Going back to playing Knights of the Old Republic the first time, it's all new, and then you see like T3M4, this little robot is completely new, but it is Star Wars because it makes sense that would be 1,000-year-old R2D2. And I just got to say, in the factory I work, we have these little scissor lifts, and I think about that robot like every day, because we have like 100 of these little things, and they go up and down just like in the game. But yeah, that's one thing I really like. To me, that felt like Star Wars. And you guys keep saying, seeing these little Mandalorian nuggets maybe showing up in the Mandalorian at some point. The whole deal with the Imperial labs in this story, I would love to see like the Rakghoul show up, the Rakghoul virus.
That would be awesome.
In some, secret Imperial virus laboratory somewhere, just a really scary, like one-shot Mandalorian episode, right. I think would be awesome.
Well, I tell you what, I've kind of fanboyed out. I apologize. I'm sitting there praising everybody here and Drew. I mean, it's because you're here with us. We've kind of done all the questions or anything. Is there, besides the Time Kings of Las Vegas, are there things about Star Wars or about your writing or any upcoming projects that you want to hit us with? And it can be the Time Kings of Las Vegas, but I want to make sure we allow you to hit on some of the topics you want to hit on before we shut things down tonight.
Yeah, I mean, no, I think we've mostly hit it. I mean, obviously, yeah, hope people check out the Kickstarter, not just for the book, but also get some great Mass Effect and Star Wars collectible merchandise, autographed, personalized, I'll, do all that. I'm currently working at Archetype Entertainment, a new video game studio. We are working on a new science fiction IP, a new science fiction franchise that we're creating. I can't say any more than that, but it's going to be an amazing, I mean, the talent we have at our studio, a lot of people I've worked with over the years. It's really going to be something I can't wait till we start showing and releasing stuff. People are going to be blown away. So, if you're a fan of my games, you got that. If you're a fan of my books, you got Time Kings and the Kickstarter. If you're a fan of anything of me that's not my books or games, that's a little weird. I wonder what's going on there, but that's okay.
Hey, real quick, you were on Jeopardy?
I was on Jeopardy. Yes. This was back in, I think in 99, I was on Jeopardy. Wow. It might have aired in 2000. They record them a little bit in advance. I think I was there December 99. It was a blast. I had a great time. I was leading after the first round. I was doing great. I'm just going to give you my I tell this to everyone. The thing you don't know about Jeopardy is it's all about the buzzer. And it's not how fast you are on the buzzer. It's how well your timing is, because most people don't know this, but you can't see it on TV, but there's a little light off the side of the stage, a little tiny bulb. And they start reading the question, or Alex rest in peace, he would start reading the question, and you would look at it and go, okay, I know that. And your brain knows the answer before he's finished reading because he's talking at a slower pace. And you want to buzz in, but that little light hasn't come on. And if you buzz in, you're locked out and you can't buzz in again. So if you ever watch the game, you see people doing this all the time. And it's because they buzzed in too fast. So you see the question, then you look at the light and you're waiting for the light to come on. And everybody's waiting and you're all just sitting there waiting for the light. And it's really hard. It's like a sprinter doing a false start. It's really hard not to jump. You're nervous, you're tense. And I got a little jumpy and I just could not time my buzzer. And that's what happened. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. But it was fun. It was a blast. Yeah, had a great time. I had been in LA on a different thing. And back then you had to go to LA to do the qualifying test, and I qualified, and they said, we'll contact you down the road. Called me about a month later and said, hey, you want to be on the show? You scored really well on the test. I was a trivia nerd back then. Well, I still am. But yeah, so it was a lot of fun. Had a great time.
Good. Well, we'll go around the horn here real quick and shut things down. Alfie, let's start with you. Alfie, any closing thoughts on the show and anything going on right now?
Yeah, just thank you so much for being here and talking. I know I talked about the video game a lot, and I apologize for that, but I really just blew me away. I knew these guys would talk about the book, so I was trying to hit that. It's an awesome game, and I still play it.
It all started with the game, man. If I wasn't on KOTOR, I would have never got the chance to do Darth Bane. So you talk about origin stories.
There you go. DDoc, how about you, brother?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you joining us, Drew. And I mean, I'm currently thoroughly enjoying your books right now. And I hope Disney knows to reach out to you in the future for certain storytelling, because I mean, you're great. It really is great. It's character building, it's world story building. It's great. So thank you for joining us.
Well, from your lips to the mouse's ears, that's all I can say.
Nick Shesky, how about you, brother?
No, I agree. I say the same thing. And really, we talk a lot on the show about headcanon. And, you ask me, Drew, some of the finest Star Wars that I know is, Bane with the creatures when he's trying to get to the other planet, flying on top of, you know what I'm saying? Like all these little moments that to me are just some of the greatest Star Wars that are out there. So just thanks for being on with us. And I know I fanboyed. I feel like Chris Farley on that Saturday Night Live sketch. That was awesome. That's how I feel tonight. So I appreciate you being on with us, and it's so nice to get to know you a little bit more.
Well, thanks. It's great being here with all y'all.
Nick, all y'all. There we go. We're getting the Austin, Texas vibe right there. Drew, probably out of everybody, I've fanboyed the most out of it, and I can't help it. For me, my son and I started this podcast 2.5 years ago. He's gotten pulled in different directions, and this crew right here, and Brent and a few others have been my go-to guys, and it's just been great to be a part of this. So to have somebody who's in the time frame that we've built this podcast and then read these books and listened to these books, have you on and to have you interact with us means the world to us. And I think like you mentioned earlier, if we get a chance to head to Vegas, we'll definitely let you know so we can try to get you when you're there. And we really appreciate it. And I would highly suggest everybody look. Heck, we didn't even talk about some of your other books, but you've got other books here, even other Star Wars books. So we could have talked about those, but anybody who's read your books needs to go check out the Kickstarter for Time Kings of Las Vegas. I know I'm going to go in there and see what level I'm going to get, because I've got a book signed by Timothy Zahn. I need to get a book signed by you.
Awesome.
But thank you very much. Hopefully we can do this again, or maybe we can meet up at one of the future conventions or something like that, and take you and grab you a drink or something like that, because it would mean a lot to us. So thank you again.
All right. Thank you.
No worries. So everybody, as you can tell, we've kind of fanboyed out for an hour and a half. Drew was kind enough to be with us. Thanks for being a part of chapter 152 of Rule the Galaxy. We hope you enjoy this. We hope you'll be along for the ride the rest of the way. We've got some great guests coming on, some great hosts and co-hosts going to be taking over for me when I'm not around. So thanks so much. And you know the spiel, Brent. I'm not going to do it. We went long tonight. So if you're listening, I'm not going to hit all of them again. You know where to find us. Just rule the galaxy everywhere. And you know what? Until next week, may the force be with you.